Okay, Shalom, Shalom, Kwam Yasha'Allah, Koholoim La Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushai, Bahashim Rakakwadash. Double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well, and that by the Spirit taught us this beautiful truth. And just want to say the water to all the H.I.M and Akwaf that's out here sincerely keeping the laws, the statutes, and commandments of Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushai, to the best of their ability. This is Yachanan the Waf, just coming at you with another quick lesson and praying that it's edifying by the Spirit. And wanted to touch on Galatians 3 and 28 and Colossians 3 and 11. These are scriptures that Christians normally would use to say that the Lord loves all nations and that all nations can be saved, which we know that's not true, because the Lord never made it. He never made a covenant with any other nation. He only made a covenant with the children of Israel. So in Galatians 3 and 28, this is one of the main ones they use. There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither bond nor free. There is neither male nor female, for ye are all one in Christ Jesus. They say Jesus, but we say Yahweh Shai, because there was no letter J when the Lord walked the earth. The letter J is only 500 years old. It was created in 1524 by a Grand Miriam named Giorgio Trissino. So the letter J is only 500 years old. But the Lord walked the earth 2,000 years ago, and that sound didn't exist. So what was it being called? He was being called by his Hebrew name that was given to his parents or his mother by the angel Gabriel. And that name is Yahweh Shai. Right? And the true name of the Father is Yahweh. The true name of the Father is Yahweh, meaning he exists or the existing one. And the true name of his son is Yahweh Shai, which means he's the savior or deliverer in the Paleo Hebrew. So we have to always bring that out, because the average Christian don't know the Lord's real name. They think that his name is Jesus. But that word Jesus, it goes into, in the Latin, it just means earth pig. The Lord wasn't being called, no one was being called Jesus, James, John, Josh, none of that stuff back then, because the letter J didn't exist. But let's get Colossians 3 and 11. Where there is neither Greek, where there is neither Greek nor Jew, circumcision nor uncircumcision, barbarian, Scythian, bond nor free, but Christ is all and in all. So these are scriptures that they might use. This is the main one right here, though. But let's get this this word Greek here. So it says Greek, G1672. And see, you see this word Hellen? It's Hellene, or is Grecian, or inhabitant, or Hellas. By extension, a Greek-speaking person, especially a non-Jew, Gentile Greek. But you have to know the history of the Greek captivity when the Israelites were in captivity to the Greeks. You have to know that history. Now, let's go. Now, I asked ChatGPT, right? Now, I asked ChatGPT, you have to ask specific questions with ChatGPT, because it'll give you two different answers for the same question. It depends on how you ask the question. So I asked, were the Gentiles or the Greeks in the New Testament, were they actual Israelites that lived the Greek lifestyle? And it basically gave me the Christian nonsense of, nope, these are other nations, and this means that everybody can be saved. Now, I asked the question in a different way right here. I says, when did Hellenization of the Jews happen? Now, remember, the word Greek, it goes off into Hellene. Grecian is Hellenistic. You know what I'm saying? It's plural, right? So now check it out. It's going to give you exactly who the Greeks are in the New Testament right here. It says the Hellenization of the Jews refers to the process by which Jewish culture and religion were influenced by Greek Hellenistic culture. See, especially after the conquest of Alexander the Great in the late 14th century BCE. Where do you get this history from? In the Apocrypha. See, if you get a 1611 King James Bible, it'll have 14 extra books in it. It's called the Apocrypha, right in the center, right in the middle, in between the Old Testament and the New Testament. You can go to Borders bookstore or wherever you can buy a book at now. You know, you can buy them, though. They have the Old English, but this was the Bible that was before the Protestants took out those books. And it gives you that actual history of what was going on. That's a part of the book. That's a part of the Bible. So they let you know how wicked these so-called white people are, too. And they actually done it for a reason, because it actually lets you know who the Israelites really are. They let you know who the other nations are. They let you know the downfall of these nations and what's going to happen. And it's a lot of history in there. But that history of the Greek captivity is very, very, very important to know. It's very important to know, right? So it says, timeline overview. 332 BCE, c. 332 BCE, Alexander the Great conquers the region of Judea, part of ancient Israel. This begins the spread of Greek culture and ideas throughout the area. 323 BCE, Alexander dies and his empire is divided amongst his generals. Judea falls under the control of Ptolemaic dynasty of Egypt, and later the Seleucid Empire of Syria. 3rd to 2nd century BCE, Hellenistic influence deepens. Here's the point. It deepens. Some Jews embrace Greek language, dress, names, and even philosophy, while others resist. Tensions between traditionalists and Hellenized Jews. That's where you get the Jews and the Gentiles arguing in the New Testament. Remember, Peter and them was basically asking, I think they was asking Peter, they was kind of beefing, because Peter had the vision to go and speak with, I think it was Cornelius. And they was like, you went into into these dudes' house. These were Israelites, but they was living like Greeks, or they was living like Gentiles, and the Jews that actually kept the customs, they didn't want nothing to do with the other Israelites that was doing that shit. They looked at them as, as nasty, man. They looked down on them real cold. That was what the beef intention was, and a lot of the New Testament was about. And a lot of the Israelites that were waking up, where they was, it was a lot of tension going on in the New Testament around the fact that, okay, why are you dealing with these people that don't keep the Jewish customs anymore? They're done. They're out of here. They have nothing to do with us anymore. And that's pretty much what the beef was over in the New Testament. And you can read all the way through it. I think, it's all the way through the New Testament overall, books, certain books where there was tension that was going on, where Peter and them, or the Jews that kept the Sabbath, they kept the Passovers, they was going to the synagogue on a day-to-day basis, whatever. But these other Jews, they was just living like Greeks. They were speaking Greek customs. Speaking the Greek language. They didn't speak Hebrew. They were eating Greek foods. They was eating abominable foods. They probably had tattoos, funny ass hairdos. Just living like Greeks. But they were actually Hebrew Israelites. That's just like Negroes, Native Americans, and Hispanics in America today. They live like Americans. You can't tell them that they're an Israelite. They're Israelites, but they live like Americans. They keep Christmas, 4th of July, Easter. They do exactly what Americans do. They go eat cheeseburgers. They eat pizza. You know what I'm saying? They watch NBA games. NFL games. They play video games. They just do what Americans do. They're not concerned about the scriptures or the Bible and knowing about their real true culture. But let's read on. 167 to 160 BCE, the tensions explode during the Maccabean revolt. This is in the Apocrypha. The Seleucid king Antiochus IV Epiphanes tries to impose Hellenistic religion and practices on the Jews, including banning circumcision. So they couldn't circumcise the kids, and actually they were being killed for doing so. And desecrating of the temple. This triggers a revolt led by the Maccabees. Matter of fact, let's get that in the Apocrypha right here. I think that's I think it's Sirach chapter 1 verse. What was it? No, I'm bugging. What the hell am I thinking? Sirach. First Maccabees 1. Right here. Let me just start at verse 10. First Maccabees 1 and 10. And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surname Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been in hostage at Rome, and he reigned in 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. In those days went there out Israel wicked men, see, who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are around be that Salakia. Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So, you know, you had wicked ass Israelites too, you know what I'm saying, that was just trying to just live the lifestyle of what I guess they, you know, just believe that they're at ease. See, the thing with our people, they don't want nothing to do with these scriptures because it comes with discipline. And with these other nations and their religions and with their customs, they have, it appeases to the flesh, so to speak. Our law, statutes, and commandments, you know, were more spiritual. But see, our people love pleasure. That's why these niggas always laughing. They always want to go to a damn barbecue, a party, a basketball game. That's why, you know, in the Old Testament, it talks about, you know, how they rose up to play when it came down to, coming out of Egypt with Moses. That's our people in a nutshell. If it's not about something that's entertaining to the asses, they don't want nothing to do with it. Okay, so let me see. Verse 14, it says, whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen. And in those places of exercises back then, they was wrestling and they were butt naked. They were actually literally butt naked with their rods out. And then there was situations where the reason why they was butt naked was for them to, you know, be, adhere to the custom, because those Greeks was uncircumcised. And they wanted to see if the men of Israel were uncircumcised. I mean, or if they were circumcised or uncircumcised, which is nasty, real nasty work. But they had a custom, I forgot what it's called, where it was a surgical procedure where Israelites were actually having penis skin put back on their penis to cut, you know, like a circumcision, to make it seem as if they were circumcised. That's how crazy they was with that shit. So you have to realize this history, it goes into the New Testament. This is how you know. If you don't have that history, this history right here, you're not going to understand the New Testament. You're just going to believe that it's talking about everybody. Because that's the way that the so-called white man, he teaches it that way. And he understands. Don't think that these Edomites, especially the elite of them, don't understand that they're Edomites and that we're the Israelites. They know that, man. They know that salvation is not for all these nations. They know that. Okay, but it goes on to say, and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief. And that's what happened, man. That's what happened. So let's go back to ChatGPT. It says 164 BCE, the Jews recaptured and rededicated the temple in Jerusalem, commemorated by the holiday Hanukkah. And Hanukkah is only mentioned in the Apocrypha, but also the Lord, he kept the holiday of Hanukkah. And also the Lord kept the Passover. The Lord celebrated the defeat of the enemies, man, of their enemies. That's how we know that for a fact the Lord is not dealing with every other nation, because the Passover is dealing with the Lord. He was born on the Passover and he died on the Passover, but he celebrated the Passover. And guess what the Passover is? They call it Easter here, but what was being celebrated was the defeat of the Egyptians and the firstborn of the Egyptians' kids being killed. And the Lord celebrated that. So that right there is a clear cut that the Lord don't love everybody. So let's move on. It says, so I guess to sum it up, it says, so the main period of the Hellenization lasted from about 332 BCE to 164 BCE, with its height during the 2nd century BCE under Seleucid rule. The process didn't end there, though it continued in various forms throughout later centuries. This is where you see, because it's about 350 years to 400 years in between the Old Testament and the New Testament. That history is in a center with the Apocrypha. It's very important to know, because you're not going to understand the New Testament. Now I ask another question. This is the last question. I only asked 2 questions. I said, were the Jews in the New Testaments a part of this Hellenization? See, you got to be a little bit, sneaky with your question with ChatGPT, because like I said, you can ask a question, and it'll give you two different answers, depends on how you ask the question. So it goes on to say, let me see here. It says, yes, many of the Jews in the New Testament period were affected by Hellenization to varying degrees. By the time of, they say Jesus, we say Yahweh Shai, 1st century CE, Hellenistic influence had already been shaping Jewish society for about 300 years. See that? This is the New Testament here. Here's how that shows up in the New Testament context. Language and culture. Greek was the common language. Across the Eastern Roman Empire, which they, the Israelites were in captivity to the Romans at the time, including Judea, most Jews spoke Greek. See? That's why it says neither neither Jew nor Greek. Most Jews spoke Greek, especially those living outside of Israel, the diaspora, and even many in cities like Jerusalem. So it was Israelites that was living like Greeks in Jerusalem. They just chose to live like the Greeks because they felt like it was, a lot more funner, or, some just, after the captivity, generation to generation goes on. Your children, they just, it's your lineage is just, well, not lineage, but your customs are just phased out over time. It's like Negroes in America. I'm telling you, Negroes in America, you can't tell these motherfuckers they're not American. You can't tell them they're not American. They'll fight with you about if you tell them they're not black. For real. But this is the same. It's an Americanization, so to speak. Okay, so it says the Septuagint, a Greek translation of the Hebrew scriptures, was widely used, often quoted in the New Testament itself. See? Jewish names often had Greek forms. Saul becomes Paul. Jesus is Greek form of Yeshua. But we know that the Lord's name was not Jesus, it's Yahweh Shai. And yet it is not Yeshua because there's no letter E or no U in the Hebrew alphabet. It says social groups. Number 2, social groups. The Sadducees and priestly aristocratic group were more open to Hellenistic ideas and worked closely with Roman authorities. So here you go. You got these are Israelites that lived more towards Roman and Greek type of customs. Mainly because a lot of these, they had those positions in Rome. They was making good money. They was living real good. They had palaces. Some had, they was living real good. So they didn't mind living like Greeks or Romans, man. It says the Pharisees were more resistant and sought to maintain Jewish religious identity and purity under foreign rule. So the Pharisees, they were more about the law. They was going to the temple. They was, they was strict about the law. That's what Paul was. Paul was a Pharisee, right? But Paul, his name was Saul, right? It was a Greek name, changed to Paul or Paul, right? So you had a whole lot of Israelites. That's just what it was, man. They was living like Greeks. And that's where you get the that mystery of neither Jew nor Greek in the scriptures, man. You have to know that. And you can actually probably just type this into ask the same questions and just Google. And Google will probably give you the same AI overview. Because that AI is kicking Esau's ass right now. They, same way that the internet was kicking their ass when it first came out. And they want to get rid of it. They're going to want to get rid of this too because it's really putting them on blast. Okay, it says number 3, the diaspora Jews. Jews living in cities like Alexandria, Ephesus, Corinth, and Rome. See, where's Ephesus? That's where you get the book of Ephesians from. Those were Israelites that Paul was writing those letters to. Corinth. Where's Corinth? The book of 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians in the Bible. Those were Israelites because those were letters that was being sent to the Israelites in those regions. This wasn't being sent to no other nations of people, man. Right? It says, and Rome were thoroughly Hellenized in language and daily life, but many still kept their religious traditions. In Acts, Paul visits many synagogues in these cities, which show how Jewish life had adapted to Hellenistic urban environments. You can't get around it, bro. It's really very simple, man. Right? Verse 4, tensions in identity. Now, this is what I was talking about, what was going on in the New Testament, because it was infighting. among the Sadducees, the Pharisees, just the Greeks. It was a lot of stir up, man, where Paul and them was going, man, to a lot of those places, man. Paul and them was getting stoned. They was getting thrown in jail. You know what I'm saying? There was a lot of tensions that was going on, man. You have to realize this history. And they was only going to Israelites. They wasn't going and speaking to no damn Romans, man. They wasn't going to speak to Pontius Pilate. The Lord didn't even kick it with Pontius Pilate like that. He didn't kick it with Herod and all these different people like that, man. And the Lord also said, let me get this one real quick. Matthew 15:24. It says, but he answered and said, this is red letter, so we know Yahushua, which the word ignorantly, which is ignorantly called Jesus is speaking. But he answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. This is who the Lord came for, man. He didn't come for no other nations, man. These Christians are duped. And they're still fighting tooth and nail to try and prove this new truth, or this not new truth, the truth wrong. It was just that the books were sealed, until our apostles, man. The Lord blessed our apostles with this knowledge, man, this wisdom and knowledge by the spirit and power of Yahweh H.I.M to come forth and teach, man. Right? So this is who the Lord was being sent to. As a matter of fact, let me get one more. Second Maccabees, I think 6 and trying to think. Salakia was another one. Oh, that's not what I want. Salakia. Let me go back to this though. Okay, so let's the tensions in the identity. It says the New Testament reflects ongoing tension between Hellenistic culture and Jewish tradition. For example, the early church debates whether Gentile converts needed to adopt Jewish customs, circumcision, kosher laws. And this was one of those arguments with those, those Israelites that was, they was, that's why, they was told to abstain from blood, I think adultery. They was given like about 4 rules. Let me see. At the time, because you kind of want to baby walk people into this, this thing. You can't just throw all the law, statutes, and commandments on the people at one time, because I think the Pharisees or Salakia, or the sect that basically kept the Jewish rules and laws, so to speak, they was like, these Gentiles, they got to be, they got to be circumcised. And it was kind of like a little tit for tat in that area. Let me see though. They had a council on it. It's a lot more to it, man. I'm just kind of, I don't mean to rush through it. Okay, but let's see here. Let me start at verse. Let me just start at verse 19. Acts 15:19. Wherefore my sentence is that we trouble not them which from among the Gentiles are turned to God. These Gentiles are the actual Israelites, man. That these Greek speaking Israelites that was living after Greek customs. But this is what they told them to do right off. It says, but that we write unto them that they abstain from pollutions of idols and from fornication and from things strangled and from blood. For Moses of old time hath in every city them that preach him, being read in the synagogues every Sabbath day. Right? So this right here is another cut to those Christians too that be talking about how the law is done away with. Because even these particular Gentiles were given certain laws, but they wasn't given a whole, they didn't overrun them with all the laws. You can't just hit them all over the head with all 613 laws. You know what I'm saying? Right off the jump. They have to be built. That's the reason why they started with these main laws right here. To abstain from pollutions of idols, because you're not supposed to have no other gods before Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, and from fornication, which, those are things that you can be put to death for, and from things strangled, and from blood, that the Lord is not, he there's rules and dietary laws where we're not supposed to eat fat and blood and things of those nature. You know what I'm saying? So he gave them 4 basics that was pretty much kind of like top notch, so to speak. But as time went on, they could learn more and they can build from there. Next year, they may be keeping, you know what I'm saying, 20 more laws, you know what I'm saying? The next following year, even though we're not saved by the laws, you know what I'm saying? We're saved by, the grace and actually, what Yahweh done for us, which the world ignorantly calls Jesus, what he done for us ultimately by faith in him. But still, that doesn't eradicate the law, like how these Christians be talking about. Oh, well, the law is done away with. Well, this right here is proof that it's not. Just this one scripture. Anyway, let's go back. Let's see what else was in here. It says some Jews were seen as too Greek. See that? Too Greek. And there was often social friction between more traditional Jews and those who were Hellenized. And that's it, man. The summary on this says, yes, the Jews in the New Testament were absolutely influenced by Hellenization, linguistically, culturally, and even politically, but Jewish identity remained strong, and groups responded to Greek influence in diverse ways, ranging from adoption to resistance. The New Testament itself is a product of the Hellenistic Jewish world. Can't get around it, which is the basically Greekish world, man. This is what was going on, man, at the time, man. Can't get around it. I wanted to see that other one, though. I'm trying to, did I go into it? Let me see. I might have went into it yesterday. I was looking for a scripture today. So ain't no telling, man. I've been through all kinds of. Well, you know what? I might not have gone into it. It's not in my history in here. But it was one that I wanted to get in the Apocrypha. I think it was second Maccabees. Bear with me here real quick. Salaki, I'm not seeing what I want. I think I'm in the wrong chapter. Let me do it this way. That's not it. There's one more that I wanted to get. Salakia. I may not be able to find it, but. Let me do it this way. It was it. I don't know why didn't it? Okay, back. Thought I was in the right chapter. Okay, so let me start here. Because this is that history, basically, right? I'm going to start at verse 5. 2 Maccabees 6 and 5. It says, the altar also was filled with profane things, which the law forbiddeth. Let me start at verse 4. It says, for the temple was filled with riot and reveling by the Gentiles who dallied with harlots and had to do with women within the circuit of the holy places, and besides that, brought in things that were not lawful. The altar also was filled with profane things, which the law forbiddeth. Neither was it lawful for a man to keep Sabbath days or ancient feasts, fast, or to profess himself at all to be a Jew. So this was a part of this Hellenistic. This is when it came down to a point that it was by law. If we catch your ass professing to be a Jew, you gonna get killed. This is how hardcore it was, where a lot of our people turned into the Greeks or turned into the Greek customs. Verse 7, it says, and in the day of the king's birth every month, they were brought by bitter constraint to eat of the sacrifices. And when the fast of Bacchus was kept, the Jews were compelled to go in procession to Bacchus carrying ivy. So they was, you know, pretty much overall being terrorized and tortured into being a damn Greek overall. It says, moreover, there went out a decree to the neighbor cities of the heathen by the suggestion of Ptolemy against the Jews, that they should observe the same fashions and be partakers of their sacrifices. And whoso would not conform themselves to the manners of the Gentiles should be put to death. Then might a man have seen the present misery. And this was what was going on with the Jews. You was put to death if you was trying to be a Jew at that time. If you was just, you know, keeping the Sabbath or trying to, you know, any of the holy days, you was circumcising your kids, any of that, anything that had to do, if you weren't living like a damn heathen, you was being put to death, bro. Verse 10, it says, for there were 2 women brought who had circumcised their children. Check out what they done to the women, whom when they had openly led round about the city, the babes handing at their breasts, they cast them down headlong from the wall. So they was throwing their asses off mountains, basically, with the baby. And others that had run together into caves nearby to keep the Sabbath day secretly, being discovered by Philip, were all burnt together, because they made a conscience to help themselves for the honor of the most sacred day. See, there you have it. There you have it, man. Now I beseech those that read this book, that they be not discouraged for these calamities, but that they judge those punishments not to be for destruction, but for a chastening of our nation. And it is overall, that's a part of being disobedient to Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. The Lord said he was going to send us into captivity, man, to our enemies. And these were the enemies, man. We you know, you had the captivity of the Egyptians, basically. You had the Babylonian period. You had the Persian and the Medes. You had the Greeks, and then, you know, the Romans, of course. Now we back in this captivity right here in America, and this is the last one, or not just in America, because it's under the Edomites, basically. You know, I'm just saying America because that's really where most of the Israelites are today. But the Israelites are scattered throughout the 4 corners of the earth. And we're keeping the customs of all these, you know, the places where we are. Some of our people live in China, eat with chopsticks, speak Chinese, eat a bunch of bullshit like the Chinese people do. You might have niggas out here eating dog, man. Mice, cats. You know, them so-called Chinese people, man, they eat everything. But our people are in those lands, live in those customs. Our people are in Japan, live in those customs. Our people are in Cambodia, live in those customs. They're in Russia, Germany, all these different places. We're in France, we're in England, we're in Italy, we're everywhere. We're scattered throughout the 4 corners of the earth. And wherever we're scattered to, we're keeping the customs, man. And those customs are heathenistic, and they're nasty to the Lord. And that's why the Lord, you know, is calling us out to you know, help us to come out of those things, you know what I'm saying, to clean us up, so to speak, before his coming. You know, he's getting us ready, you know, getting his bride ready, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? So I just wanted to touch on this. I just, you know, seen the ChatGPT, and I'm like, well, damn, this shit explains it well. If you were to give this to the average preacher, this is straightforward. This is the gospel right here overall. This is, you know, you can get this to one of these fucking pastors, and they'll look all over this. Like, this is not right. This is not right. What are you talking about? But this is the history. They act as if the Israelites don't have a history. The whole Bible is a history book of the Israelites. But the one thing that's missing, what Esau took out, the so-called white man took out, is that Apocrypha, man. So get you a 1611 King James Bible with the Apocrypha in it. Matter of fact, this one right here, I ordered this one years back. But it could be free now. It's this one right here, eSword. It's this app right here, what you see with this sword right here. And it's got the Apocrypha in it. You can see right here, it's got all the books. But then, you know, it's got a lot of different translations and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? A lot of the history, you know, word search, a lot of that stuff. I think I spent about $25 for this one years back when I first came into the truth on Apple, in the Apple store. So grab that boy up, man. You know what I'm saying? Or you don't even have to buy them now. You can get a KJV. They free. You know, I got another free one, you know, but I like this one better because it, you know, it just got a lot more to it. And then they update it as well. You know what I'm saying? So, but just if you're going to get a paper, you know, the book, just know that it's going to read in Old English. And it's kind of hard to read if you're a new believer. If you're new to this truth, that boy going to be hard for you to really kind of understand because, again, there's no letter J's in that Bible. You know, it's all letter I's in the place of J. Because that's what they was using at the time. Because if you look up when the letter J was invented, you'll see that it's interchangeable with the letter I, which that's where in the Greek, you know, you get Jesus, which they call Jesus, but his name is Yahweh in the Hebrew, in the Paleo Hebrew. That's the original name. So that's what we roll with, you know. So again, repent to the Father Yahweh, which means that he exists, or the existing one, in the name of his son Yahweh Shai. With that, Shalom.